Well, thank you to the choir. Very lovely. So today, for the next few Sundays, we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite subject and topic in church. Are you ready for this? Money. Now, come on. All right. I know that when we think about money, we'd rather ask our neighbors and friends how they vote than talk about money. People are sensitive when it comes to talking about money. I don't preach a lot about money, mostly because I'm still working through my own understanding of what it means in my life, in my family's life. So one of my colleagues in ministry with a young family of his own, similar in age, he's determined that his children should be comfortable talking about money. He's going to break this circle of kind of keeping it a quiet topic. And he wants them to be able to talk freely about the value of money and the financial decisions they make. And one night, the tooth fairy made a visit to his daughter's bedroom. And there appeared 3 quarters along with a handwritten note from the tooth fairy that said this: "You lost your first tooth and I'm so proud. I flew into your room, shush, not so loud. Asleep in your bed, you sure did not hear. Under your pillow, 3 quarters appeared. 1 quarter to spend however you wish, another quarter to save and cherish. And finally, 1 quarter, please give it away and share it with others. For this I pray." Well, the next morning, the excitement level was on overdrive. It was the first missing tooth of the family. And this little girl woke up, and there they were, 3 quarters under the pillow. Her parents read her the note. Hearing the suggestion that 1 of the quarters be given away, there were big, gut-wrenching tears. It was, I understand, a hard moment of parenting. That first family conversation about money was not going well. But the following Sunday, with the beaming smile minus 1 tooth, there was a loud clunk as her quarter went into the offering plate. Now, why is it so hard to talk about and to give money away? Why do we have an emotional, think about this seriously, why do we have an emotional attachment to money? Not just as 6-year-olds, right? But at any age. Why do we have an emotional attachment to it? You know, money is a dominant theme in the Bible. There are more than 4,500 references to money in the scriptures. Jesus was not shy talking about it. I realized this week that the New Testament says more about money than heaven and hell combined. Money is mentioned in the New Testament 5 times more often than praying. So money clearly is a spiritual issue. But for many of us, or I should say at least for me, money is a confusing issue. We tend to approach money with the false belief that money can solve most of our problems and issues. And why shouldn't we believe this, right? It's what we've been taught. So this week I read an article that said in 2016, and I'm not a country music fan, so this is new to me. Maybe you'll know this. But in 2016, the number 1 country song was, any country music fans out there? The number 1 country song was "Money Can Buy Me a Boat." All right. It has more than 10 million views on YouTube. I'm not really Rod's probably looking it up now. I'm not really a fan of country music. I'm more like the Johnny Cash, Hank Williams type of guy. But I watched a few minutes of this video. At first, I thought, oh, I could show this at church on Sunday. And then I was like, it's just too corny. I'm sorry. But anyway, I like the premise of the song and the lyrics of it. Let me share with you some words. It says, "If we had enough money, we could buy a boat with a truck to pull it, a Yeti 110, and a few iced-down silver bullets." Well, I had to look up what a Yeti 110 is. Sorry. It's a fancy ice cooler with a built-in blender and a promise to keep your food cold for a week. The price is just a little over $800. If I just had this, says the song, I would be much happier. All right. Now, maybe they didn't have Yeti 110s in ancient Israel or trucks or boats, right? But the Israelites knew what it meant to want, to desire something, to think that money would solve everything. Our scripture today, if TJ can pull that up there, it comes from the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, the word Ecclesiastes in Greek is usually translated as preacher or teacher. So I invite you to listen now to what this ancient preacher, reflecting back on his life, has to say. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. I gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, men and women, the delights of the flesh, and many concubines. Probably should have edited that one out. I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. My wisdom remained with me. Whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in my toil, and this was reward for all my toil. Right? So he's looking back on it all, how good it's been. Then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil I had spent in doing it, and again, all was vanity and a chasing after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. I think those words can still ring true today, because how many of us, at some time or another, how many of us look back on life and all we have purchased at one time or another, and we look back at something and we think, did this really bring me the happiness that I thought it would? The Ecclesiastes is not saying that we shouldn't purchase something or buy something. It's not saying that at all. And if a Yeti 110 is in your budget, go for it. If you have one, invite me out on the lake. But here's what Ecclesiastes is saying. When we start to believe that our lives are judged, whether it be by ourselves or others, when we start to believe that our lives are judged by what we own or do not own, then we lose purpose and meaning. You've heard this phrase, right? Money is the root of all evil. That doesn't occur in the Bible. A phrase like it does occur in the Bible, and it comes from Paul's letter to Timothy, and Paul says, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil." And some people craving money have wandered from the true faith, and proceed for themselves many sorrows. In other words, Paul says money can be used for good or for evil. It can be used to enslave us or to free us. But money in itself is morally neutral, right? You can't reach in your wallet and pull out a credit card or dollar bill or whatever and say this money is good or evil. It's not. So the question becomes, how do we use money to liberate us, to free us? How can you, just as that little girl did with her 1 quarter, which I wanted to point out to him, man, that's a pretty steep percentage, 3 quarters, and you're asking her to give away one of them? Did you do that in your own life? Anyway, how can we give with an attitude of gratitude? How can we share without the emotional toil, without the resentment, without the fear? And for me, I think it comes down to an intentional mind change. So, and I'm not perfect at it. Please don't think that. So there are some days when I wake up in the morning, right? There are some days when I wake up in the morning and I think about how tired I am, how I didn't get enough sleep, how I have a lot to do, how there's these multiple children running around on my bed, Then as the day goes on, I think about my lack of time, that I'm behind or that I'm lacking in something. And by the end of the day, right before I fall asleep, even though they tell you not to do this, I'm kind of like running through the mental list of what to do the next day, right? And trying to resist typing it into the phone for a reminder. On these days, here's what I wonder though. I wonder if this internal condition of scarcity, so just what's going on in my mind, right? Internal condition of scarcity. I wonder if this thought of never having enough can actually get to the heart, for many of us, at least me anyway, about why it's so hard to share freely and joyfully when it comes to money. And I wonder if it's possible to move our mindset from there's not enough and more is better to something like there is enough and less can be more. Is this possible to do? Sometimes I think the answer is yes. I think we can find a way to renew our understandings of sufficiency and how we become stewards of money, and we're going to talk more about that next week. But I was really thinking about this yesterday. You know, when it's all said and done, and I imagine the same is true for you, when it's all said and done, I want to be known more for what I allocated than what I accumulated. Is that true for you? So let's go back to that song about the boat, right? I just can't get it out of my mind. Now, the musician who wrote this song, his name is Chris Janson. And I assume, even though that I've never, I assume that even though I haven't heard him, I assume he's a famous singer, right? Anybody know him? Okay, well, whatever. Maybe you're too embarrassed to say it now. Anyway, this record of his sold more than this song, Money Can Buy Me a Boat. It sold more than 1 million copies. So I Googled him, and here's what I learned about him. He sold all these records, and he traveled across the country, and he gave these shows, and he made this music video, and they're out there on a lake with a boat and everything else. And then he decided in his own personal life not to buy a boat. Instead, he rented 3 kayaks and went out on the lake where the video was shot and hung out on the water with his family. So Billboard magazine did an interview with him, kind of a profile, and they said to Chris, they said, "Your song seems to imply that if you had money, you would buy a boat and a truck and you would be happy. Is that true?" Well, that is what the lyrics of the song say. He said, "Listen, for me, happiness means my family. I know that doesn't fit with the song, but happiness is my wife and my kids and my faith and my relationship with the Lord. That is where I find happiness." "Okay," said the interviewer, "so what are you going to do if your song makes $1 million on this?" And he said, "If I ever make $1 million, I tell you the first thing I'm going to buy is," and this is when I knew I liked him, "diapers." Oh, they are expensive. "As long as my family is secure," he says, "in their livelihood, I'm happy." He continues saying, "Money can buy a boat, but I'm not sure I want a boat. It's all about my wife and my kids, and anything else is just icing on the cake. In the end, it's all about how you feel and how you wake up, and if you're a good human being and a follower of Jesus Christ at the end of the day." Now, that's a song I probably would have liked. Anyway, the message stays the same, from the preacher of Ecclesiastes to a country music song to the modern day. Money is not who we are. After a certain amount of money, and we've talked about this before, but after the basic needs are met, food, shelter, after those basic needs are met, money, the research shows, cannot bring you any more happiness. But we think it can, right? We think it can. But I think what money can do and should do is help us understand that our greatest priorities in life and how we set those priorities and how we share them with others I really think that money can be a reflection of our internal self, a reflection of who we are and who we want to be, a reflection of our core values. So I have a challenge for you this week, for all of us. This week I invite you to think about your money and just think about on a daily or weekly basis, how do you interact with it? How do you interpret it? What can money teach you about your own self-discovery and self-transformation? Just spend a week thinking about it. How do I approach money? What does it mean to me? How much time do I spend studying it? And what can it teach me? And if you need any help answering the questions, you can go back to the second chapter of Ecclesiastes, our scripture for today, and that very last line, when the preacher is thinking back about it all, looking back on his life, he says the answer is blowing in the wind. So may you find that answer. Through Christ we say together, amen.